You are not easygoing. You are well trained. And that is exactly why it feels so natural. Because no one ever taught you to disappear directly. It happened slowly, quietly, through small moments where having preferences felt risky. So you adapted. You learned to smooth things out, to say whatever works, to keep the room comfortable before you ever checked if you were. And over time that became your personality, or at least what looks like it from the outside. Calm, flexible, low maintenance, easy to be around. But here is the uncomfortable truth. What looks like peace is often just constant self-editing. And what looks like maturity is sometimes just fear in a more acceptable form. Because every time you adjust yourself to avoid friction, you reinforce one idea, that your needs come second. And you do it so well that no one notices, not even you. Until one day you catch something subtle, maybe in your own behavior, maybe in someone younger. A pause before answering, a quick scan of the room. A quiet whatever is fine when it clearly is not. And in that moment, something clicks. This is not personality. This is a system. A system designed to keep you safe, but now running in situations where safety was never actually at risk. And the strangest part is this. It worked. It got you through. It made you likable. It kept things smooth, which is exactly why it is so hard to question. Because when a system works, you do not challenge it. You repeat it, even when it starts costing you something you cannot immediately see. Your energy, your clarity, your ability to know what you actually want. And the cost does not show up all at once. It accumulates quietly in the background until one day you realize you have been present in every room, but somehow absent from your own life. It usually does not look like a problem at first. It looks like being considerate, being flexible, being the person who keeps things easy. You open a conversation, and before you even respond, you are already adjusting. Tone, wording, timing. You say yes faster than you think. You say, I do not mind before you even check if you do. You agree to plans you did not choose, then quietly carry the weight of them later. And none of this feels dramatic. It feels efficient, like you are just avoiding unnecessary friction. But underneath that pattern, there is a deeper mechanism. Running. Your attention is almost always pointed outward, tracking reactions, scanning for small shifts, micro pauses, changes in energy. You are reading the room before you read yourself. And over time, that creates a subtle imbalance. Because the more you practice reading others, the less you practice accessing your own signal. What you want becomes slower, less clear, sometimes completely silent, not because it disappeared, but because it was never given consistent space to develop. And this is where people get it wrong. They think the issue is low confidence or weak discipline, but it is not. It is structural. It is a system built in an environment where unpredictability made adaptation necessary, where being agreeable reduced tension, where keeping others comfortable created a sense of safety, even if that safety was inconsistent. So your brain learned a simple rule: prioritize the room, not yourself. And every time you follow that rule, it reinforces itself. Every avoided conflict feels like proof that conflict is dangerous. Every moment of self-suppression feels like stability. And slowly, without noticing, you lose access to something fundamental: the ability to generate a clear internal answer. When someone asks a simple question, what do you want? And the pause that follows is not hesitation. It is the result of years spent answering a different question. What will keep everything smooth? At some point, the pattern becomes too consistent to ignore, not because something breaks, but because nothing feels fully yours. Decisions feel heavier than they should. Simple choices take longer. And there is a quiet distance between what you say and what you actually think. And that is when a different kind of understanding starts to form, not emotional, not dramatic, just precise. Your behavior is not a reflection of who you are. It is a reflection of what your system learned to prioritize. And like any system, it follows rules. If expressing a need once led to tension, the system marks that as unsafe. If staying agreeable reduced conflict, It marks that as optimal, and then it repeats, automatically, efficiently, without asking if the conditions have changed. This is not weakness, it is reinforcement. Your brain is doing exactly what it was trained to do. Minimize risk, maintain connection, avoid disruption. But here's the shift. The environment you are in now is not the one that created those rules. And yet the rules are still running, which means your reactions are no longer based on present reality, they are based on past predictions. Your nervous system treats small preferences like potential threats. It flags disagreement as danger. It pushes you to smooth things over before anything even happens. And that explains the exhaustion, because you are not just living your life, you are constantly managing an invisible layer of calculations, predicting outcomes, editing responses, optimizing for comfort that may not even be required. And once you see it this way, clearly, almost mechanically, something changes. The question is no longer why am I like this? It becomes what system am I running? And more importantly, is it still accurate for the life I am living now? So instead of trying to force yourself to be more confident or waiting for the right moment to finally speak up, you change the system itself, not through intensity, but through small controlled repetitions, something simple enough to do today. Step 1. Detect the pattern in real time. Specifically, the moment you are about to say, I do not mind, or whatever works, pause for a second and ask one quiet question. Is that actually true, or am I just trying to avoid discomfort? Do not overthink it. Just notice, because awareness is the entry point. Step 2. Introduce a low-risk preference. Not something big, not a confrontation, just a small choice. Pick the place to eat. Suggest a different time. Say I would rather do this instead. The goal is not to be assertive. The goal is to give your brain new data, something it has not seen enough of. Step 3. Stay in the moment after you say it. This is where most people revert. They soften it. They add justification. They try to manage the reaction, but instead, do nothing extra. Just stay. Let the response happen without fixing it. Because this is the exact point where your nervous system updates. It expects tension. It predicts rejection. And when that does not happen, even in small ways, the prediction weakens slightly. And that is enough. Imagine a simple stick figure in a room before it constantly scans every face, adjusting in real time. Now it pauses, checks its own signal first, then speaks, not loudly, not perfectly, just clearly enough, and repeats. That is the entire system. Notice the pattern. Express something small, stay present, no motivation required, no personality change, just a different loop running quietly in the background. If you run this system long enough, the changes do not appear as a sudden transformation. They show up in smaller, quieter ways. Decisions start taking less energy, not because life got easier, but because you are no longer simulating every possible reaction before choosing. There is less internal noise, fewer second guesses. Conversations begin to feel lighter because you are not carrying two layers at once, what you say and what you hide. Your attention slowly returns to where it was meant to be, not constantly scanning the room, but anchored in your own signal. And that alone reduces a kind of background fatigue you may not have even noticed before. And then something more important begins to shift. Your relationships, not by becoming more intense, but by becoming more real. Small disagreements stop feeling like threats to connection. They become normal parts of it. You start seeing that honesty does not automatically lead to loss. And over time, that creates a different kind of trust, one that is not built on being easy to be around, but on being known. And this changes the dynamic in subtle ways. People respond to what is actually there, not just the version of you that keeps everything smooth. And in that space, something stabilizes. You do not feel the need to maintain every interaction. You do not feel responsible for every emotional shift around you. And the result is not that you become louder or more dominant. It is that you become more consistent, internally aligned, and that consistency compounds not through big breakthroughs, but through repeated small moments where you chose to be slightly more honest than before and nothing broke, and that is the point. Consistency matters more than intensity, because intensity fades, but a system that runs every day, even quietly, reshapes how you think, how you decide, and how you show up over time. The version of you that learned to stay quiet was not weak. It was precise. It read the environment and adapted in the fastest way possible. It kept things stable when stability was not guaranteed. And that matters, but survival systems do not. Update on their own, they keep running long after the environment has changed, repeating patterns that once made sense. Now creating distance instead. And the difficult part is this. Awareness alone does not rewrite the system. Understanding it does not switch it off. Because your nervous system does not learn through insight. It learns through repetition, small moments, almost invisible ones, where you do something slightly different and nothing bad happens. And over time, that becomes evidence. And that evidence becomes a new baseline. So the goal is not to become someone who always knows exactly what they want or always says it perfectly. The goal is simpler. Give your system enough proof that honesty and connection can exist at the same time. And you do that one moment at a time. Starting with the next I do not mind. Pause, check, and choose just a little more truth than before. Stay in the moment. Let it pass. That is enough. Because you do not need to rebuild your entire personality. You just need to update the system that runs it. And if you have ever noticed yourself stuck in this loop, type system in the comments and subscribe each week. We refine one small part of how you operate, not by pushing harder, but by designing better.